I'm Danielle, and welcome to this enchanted house. Is Cottagecore over? I hate to tell you, it might be. It might be over. Cottagecore's done with. Time to pack it up and go home. Nah, I'm just kidding. Really what we're going to be talking about today is Cottagecore as a trend. Has it kind of peaked? And then, no surprises here, my answer is yes. But I want to talk about that from the perspective of someone who's gone through this before with a different aesthetic, steampunk. Now, just on the surface, steampunk and cottagecore seem very different, with steampunk leaning more towards industrial and science and exploring, and cottagecore being stay at home and homey and country. But they do have a lot in common, just if you poke just beneath the surface. Both like things that are old-fashioned. There is, romanticizing the past, though they do it in very different ways. There is this whole idea, the sort of anti-capitalist notion of doing things for yourself and making things from scratch that exist in both, though once again in very different ways. Whereas cottagecore largely started as an aesthetic that drew on lifestyles and subculture, steampunk started as a genre that grew into an aesthetic and a subculture. So there's a difference there. So let's talk about my experience with steampunk. Steampunk emerges in the first of all, if you are unfamiliar with steampunk, please check out my steampunk video. I talk about it as an aesthetic, but also kind of the journey it's been through. We're going to recap some of that here. I also do have a cottagecore video if this is your first time to cottagecore. So steampunk kind of emerges as a thing in the mid-2000s. It comes out of steampunk novels, but quickly becomes, an aesthetic and a lifestyle and a subculture, and all that grows out of it pretty quickly. I get into it around, I think, 2007, 2008. By the way, this is just me giving a rambling talk. Steampunk comes up, so steampunk, starts to become popular. IBM famously predicted it would be like this huge popular thing. It never quite hit that, but it was super popular. You'd find all the time these huge conventions popped up. You could go to these huge steampunk events. It was not hard to find people who were interested in steampunk. There were message boards, there were bands, there was clothing, there was accessories. And steampunk started to enter into the mainstream. It wasn't like ubiquitous per se, but you could say steampunk and people kind of knew what it was, and they would give you whatever their example was. It was a famously, when goths found brown or whatever. It was a very considered like hipster thing at the time. It grows in popularity, and as it gets into mainstream, remember how I talked about it was kind of anti-capitalist? There's people wanting to basically cash in on steampunk, and one of the big jokes in steampunk was, oh, you glued gears on it and it made it steampunk. There was a site called Regretsy. April Cornell, if I'm getting her name wrong, it'll be down here. I want to say April Winchell. April Winchell. She's a voice actress who does a lot of voice. If you go look up her IMDb page, she's one of the voices of your childhood probably. And she's still a very active voice actor. But she started as a side project, this sort of comedy thing, Regretsy, which was all the things. And one of the running gags on there was the steampunk thing of, I made it steampunk by gluing gears on it. And so there were people cashing in, you can make anything steampunk. You could, stuffed animal, put some gears on it. Drinking glass, put some gears on it. Steampunk, put gears on it. And as you see that, you start to see the steampunk stuff appear in Hot Topic. Hot Topic, is never afraid to cash in on a trend. It is probably, I'm going to point out here, the death knell of the trend. Because usually these are things that, I'm talking about things that are kind of start small and build up, not things that are, oh, this is corporate induced. In fact, like I talked about Steampunk had a very anti-capitalist thread going through it. At its core, the genre was about reimagining this Victorian era and talking about how, looking at how capitalism was really birthed in that era and became, hence we have, the Gilded Age and all the way going up until the we had stock market crash kind of effectively and put the brakes on it for a bit. But anyway, so when the capitalists notice your trend and make it a thing, that's the death knell. That is where we have reached the point of saturation. That is the point where everybody's into it, casually and so forth. And I think we've reached that point with cottagecore. Why am I saying that? Because this really cute dress I bought from Hot Topic. It is actually a mushroom Tinkerbell dress, and I love it. And I'm going to get into why I bought it. But when I saw it on Hot Topic, and then I started looking through Hot Topic, cottagecore jewelry, mushroom dresses, puffy sleeves, all of that. And it's honestly, cottagecore has gone beyond steampunk in terms of fashion. There are all the fashion brands. Everything has puffy sleeves and corset lacing and flowy skirts and floral prints and gingham, and even back in 2020, we saw Target was doing its prairie dresses. Cottagecore, because cottagecore, let's talk about cottagecore. Cottagecore was a thing well before 2020. But the circumstances of 2020 propelled cottagecore from sort of this niche little area of the internet, something that was kind of a thing, mostly people did photo boards and stuff, to a full-on aesthetic, subculture, lifestyle. Not so much a genre, but I'm even going to get into that in a minute. We have reached the death knell. Cottagecore has, which started, like I said, had a very strong when it started anti-capitalist thread. It was about doing things on your own, living on your own, living disconnected from things a little bit unplugged, favoring homemade over mass-produced, which was a steampunk thing too when steampunk started. And now here we are. Hot Topic is all cottagecore, and they're, like I said, Hot Topic at one point was steampunk. And so where do we go from here? What happens? So let's talk about what happens with steampunk. Most recently, if you've been watching Miss Marvel, Kamala has famously said, steampunk is dead.
How about steampunk and Captain Marvel?
Steampunk is dead.
Okay, fine.
So yeah, steampunk's dead. And it's over. And no one does steampunk anymore. Except, not exactly. Steampunk looks different now. You don't see steampunk stuff so much mainstream. There's still, I know, I think Design Toscano still has steampunk-esque stuff you can buy. You can still find steampunk. Spirit Halloween actually has a great selection of steampunk costumes for what they are as Halloween costumes. They're not clothing. I will say, if you want to do steampunk and you want a starting point, that's a valid place to start. Those are things that I have actually bought stuff from there and zhuzhed it up and used it in my own costuming. So there's nothing wrong with it. But steampunk really isn't a thing anymore like it was. It's not. There are still conventions, though there are fewer and not as, I won't say they're not as well attended, but it is definitely the same people. It is the people who started with steampunk back in the mid-2000s, people like me who were in their 20s or early 30s, and we've aged up, and now you see more people in their 40s and their 50s. And there's nothing wrong with that. It is a wonderful, thriving community still. It is still a subculture. I don't see people really talking about so much as a lifestyle anymore. The people who were in that were kind of crossed over with the whole maker movement. And, maybe that was their aesthetic and they were trying to combine. But I don't see it so much as a lifestyle anymore. But see it as an aesthetic. People know what it is. It's a recognizable aesthetic. You can say steampunk to a person. There's a really good chance they'll have, like I said, a set thing of what it is. And there's still steampunk things being produced. It's just not as many of them. So that's what we have to look forward on Cottagecore is we will see people leave because they were into it. They were into it for on the surface level for a bit, but they've moved on to the next thing, or they found the next thing for them. We've reached this kind of saturation point. If we haven't reached it yet, we're going to reach it here very shortly. I'm pretty certain. And then they'll move on to the next thing, which who knows could be like we're seeing a return to like 70s and 80s type fashion again. So maybe we'll see more retro stuff might come in more. We might we live in a wonderful dystopian future. Cyberpunk might come back into vogue. Something wholly new. Though usually, and we'll get to that, there's nothing really new under the sun. Things just reinvent themselves. That said, the reason I bought this dress is because I know this is coming, the saturation point is a temporary thing. And I really loved it. It was really cute. It was really hard for me to find really cute plus-size cottagecore clothing at all. And I knew it was one of those things that will probably sell out really quickly because it's plus size. So I bought it for myself. And it's part of my wardrobe now, and I love it, and it's cute, and I'm gonna wear it. And I know there's issues with people with fast fashion saying, "Oh, but it's fast fashion." Yeah, but this dress is gonna stay with me for a while. It's part of my wardrobe now. I can wear it. It's not going to. I don't have to buy clothes. It's something I don't. It's filling a space. It's not something I'm gonna wear for once and get rid of. That's the point of fast fashion. Fast fashion is very much about trend and being, part of the in crowd. Cottagecore, we're right now part of the in crowd, but moving forward, we're probably going to get left behind. And that's okay. Enjoy it, and that's why I'm just going to say right now, if you see something you like that's cottagecore, buy it, whether it is in this mass consumerist thing or if it's an artisan, because even in steampunk there were a lot of really talented, really great artists working in steampunk, making clothing and accessories and art and fashion, and a lot of them have moved on to other things, and there are people I really regret not getting things from. And likewise, there are people I'm really glad I bought things from. I'm going to use the example, one of my favorite pictures of me in steampunk is this picture of me with this parasol. And the woman who makes this parasol, she doesn't do steampunk anymore. She doesn't make these anymore. You cannot get them anymore unless you find someone who has one and is willing to part with it secondhand. And I feel lucky to have it. And I'm really glad I bought it. And I think there's always this, I shouldn't spend this, I shouldn't do this. I am going to say this now. If it is unique, if it is unusual, if it's strange, and it's a trend, and it's available, and you've got this plethora, now's the time to get it, because as the world moves forward, if this is you, if cottagecore is you, and you are going to be cottagecore, you don't care about trends. If you were cottagecore before it was cottagecore, the world's going to move on. Now's the time to get the stuff you like. And I'm not saying it will go away completely. You'll find things secondhand. Famously, mushroom canisters, which, oh my God, the prices on those within a few years just went whoop, because they became popular because of cottagecore and fairy cargo and goblin core and all that. But remember, these were not handcrafted artisan things. These were mass-produced, popular trend, and that's why everybody had them, and that's why you still can find them. So I will say, going forward, you will be able to find probably cottagecore things, but not as easily accessible or with such choice. You can still find steampunk things. You can still find people in steampunk groups selling things secondhand. There are still wonderful artists out there who make stuff. But the world moves on, and if you're still part of it and still enjoy it, then it's never going to be over. I don't know. I hope this kind of made sense to everybody. It's just something I thought about when I saw this dress. And I was like, oh, I love this dress. And I was like, oh, I really shouldn't buy this dress. But I was like, if I don't buy this dress, I'm never going to own this dress. And this is like, it hits my buttons with the mushrooms. I love the color. I love the corseting. I can get it in my size. And it's got Tinkerbell as a bonus. I love Tink. She rocks. So, yeah. And then I was like, if I don't buy it, I'm never going to own it. And then, I won't, I mean, it's not something I'm going to, like, deeply regret, but it's something 5 years from now when I can't get this dress, I still am enjoying this dress, I'm going to be happy I bought this dress. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, cottagecore, never going to be over. Likewise, steampunk, never really going to be over. And the reason is they never really were, they started you can kind of see where those words come up, but they existed well before the terms came to be. I mean, it's very famously, I know lots of people who were like, I was cottagecore before cottagecore was a thing. And they're all, like, a lot of them are my age or older. I'm really knocking out my videos today, but, like, I did this cottagecore event video, and I was talking to one of the organizers, and she was, not too much older than I am. But she's like, I didn't know what cottagecore was. These other people explained it to me. It's like, oh, I've been doing this for, all my life. It's like, yeah. Cottagecore is a word to describe this sort of set of things, that we envision, that sort of country and cottage and rustic and nature that all kind of go together. That things that have always kind of existed. We've just kind of made this box that we put all this in. And then even steampunk. People are like, oh, steampunk is a genre, yeah, but I'll point out Wild Wild West really came out before steampunk was a thing, and it is like a hugely steampunk movie. Whether it's a good movie is another whole other thing. I don't know. I think it got a lot of crap. That if it's just a fun it is a fun popcorn movie, and I don't know, expecting more of it. It's not the greatest movie of all time, but I don't know. If you're like steampunk, it's definitely watchable, and it's definitely like, ooh, I love that. But even the show it's based on, which, was, I'm going to say 60s, the Wild West TV show, also had lots of steampunk elements in it that, it was retro future is the word. And before, where you take something that's, it's like the 50s sci-fi, or Jules Verne type sci-fi, which is very steampunk. That kind of existed before. Steampunk had its own sort of, like I said, it wasn't aesthetic, but also had this sort of genre and subculture and these ideas that kind of came with it. And that's really a trend with modern aesthetic movements. Probably dating back to the original aesthetic movement. I'm going to put dates down here because I can't remember dates off the top of my head. But dating back to the original aesthetic movement, their aesthetic doesn't exist just as a look. I mean, there are things that are aesthetics that are just looks, but when you see something like these things, they usually have all these things attached to them. And because they do, they never really quite go away. They just kind of trend up and then trend back down. And then cottagecore, there'll be another word sometime later that does a lot of what cottagecore does. Or maybe we'll see a fusion of cottagecore and steampunk, or dark academia. We see these all kind of all crossing over anyway. Thanks to the internet, things move much quicker these days. But yeah, so what do you guys think? Is cottagecore over? Have we reached the saturation point? Has my experience with steampunk clouded my vision, or you think I've kind of got it mapped out, kind of where we're heading here? I would love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to talk with you guys down in the comments. So, leave me a comment. As always, if you just want to say hi, I will say hi back to you. I've mentioned a lot of my other videos. I do lots with aesthetic and cottagecore and steampunk and, what I call enchanted living. So, please check out my other videos. If you see what you like, please subscribe, and then you can keep up with the latest and the greatest. I'd love to connect with you guys on social media. There are links to my Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter below. I hope you guys have an enchanted day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!